How's it going, everybody? So in this week's Shop Talk Tuesday, we are going to be putting these handle scales that we made in last week's Shop Talk Tuesday episode onto this farrier's rasp knife that we've been working on. We're going to be putting them on there, we're going to be shaping them, and we're going to get the handle part of this build done. I'm going to break everything down just like I normally do. Hopefully y'all get a lot of takeaways from this. If you do, make sure you like the video, make sure you share the video, subscribe to the channel. But without further ado, let's go over to the workbench and let's start this process. Let's get it. So for this step, we only need a few things, and that is a marker, the scales, the knife, a set of calipers, and a clamp to be able to get everything ready to start drilling the pinholes. Now, one of the things that we're going to be doing is getting the knife on top of the scales and starting to figure out how we're going to set them up and space them so that our spacers are pretty much the equal distance from the pins. Now, it's pretty easy just to use a set of calipers. Come up here, get it roughly to where it's in the center of that hole. About right there. So we can probably shift it forward just a hair. Sometimes I'll do this stuff by eye and it will be pretty right, but you just want to be careful doing that. Right there is centered. We're going to go ahead and we're going to mark the outline of our tang onto the scales. This is going to help us just in case we get it to where the stuff shifts, where the handle shifts from the knife itself, the tang. We can actually know to go back where we're supposed to be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of mark where we want our scales to sit on here. So I want them to come about right here to about right there. So now we're just going to draw roughly the angle of the front of the handle where it's going to meet the ricasso. I think that's going to be pretty good right there. Okay, so we're just clamping it down to where one hole is exposed. We're going to drill through that one, put a pin in there, and then take the clamp off, drill through the back one, put a pin in there, then we can cut off the excess. So, here we go. So now that we've got our angles made on the front of this set of scales where they're going to meet the ricasso, We need to go ahead and final sand this because we'll never be able to really mess with this again once it's attached to the tang itself. So we're going to start with 320 grit and just go straight to 600 grit and call it there. So now that we've got everything prepped, we got the front of our scales shaped and smoothed and everything, we can go ahead and start attaching all this. One of the things that I've already done is I cleaned all the surfaces that we're about to glue together with acetone, then let it dry. Now we're about to mix our 2-part epoxy, just 5-minute JB Weld epoxy, and we're going to put it on everything, then put everything together. So far, what we've done off camera was I went ahead and smoothed everything out, even with the tang. So I got rid of all of the excess. And then I went ahead and smoothed off the sides and squared them up so that the pins are nice and smooth. Now all we got to do is go through and bevel this a little bit around it and then round the sides just a hair. We're not going to do it too crazy on the contouring on this because it's already comfortable as sits. We just need to make it just a hair more smooth. So we're going to do some grinding on the 36 grit belt with the 2x72, and then we're going to go to the spindle sander, fine tune it a little bit, and then hand sand it the rest of the way. So that's what we're going to get knocked out now. So the goal with the oscillating spindle sander here is to always get in here and smooth everything out. We have real hard edges on this, but just from a little bit of work on the spindle sander, we were able to round everything, get it all smooth and ready to hand sand. Now this takes a lot of those hardcore 36 grit belt grinding lines out of it for us, so we're not having to spend all that time sanding it by hand. So now we got to do the other side and go over there and start hand sanding. So with the handle set up like this, I'm going to be using a few different things to sand with it. I'm going to be using a hard backer. This is just a piece of wood that is about the same width as my foam backer that I use. So hard backer, that's going to be for areas like where the pins are, just to make sure that I'm sanding nice and even and not accidentally doming the pins and sanding the G10 around it and dropping it and rounding the pin over. I want to make sure that I go nice and even with that so it sands at the same time. And then we're going to be using my little foam pad with the soft pad and the hard one on the back side. So hard one whenever we're coming across around here, and then I'm going to be using the soft one whenever I start getting into the belly area where there's a little bit more contouring. So we're just using different ones. Of course, I don't need to use the hard one around this edge. I'm going to use the foam one. That way it can kind of bend around it just a little bit. And we're going to be starting with 320 grit, then going to 600 grit, and then buffing from there. So very easy to do this amount of hand sanding that we're doing. Now, one of the things that I already did was I went through and I sanded the spine a little bit just to get rid of some of the grinding lines. And all I did with that was went at angles, 45-degree angles on the blade, sanded everything out, and then started pulling back and forth, long sweeping motion, and that's all I did there. I'll probably have to sand this again because I'm going to be sanding around here, but at least all the lines are out, and it's going to need to be, you know, just very minimal work to actually sand that. So right now I want to go ahead and start sanding these pins and getting them nice and even and getting all the deep grind lines out of them. So once I get those to where there's no more hardcore grinding lines in there, I can go ahead and go with my hard foam backer and start coming at this edge and getting this nice and smoothed out and contoured just a little bit finer than what we could do with the oscillating spindle sander. Now you'll see a lot of people take their sandpaper and strop across right here. That actually works just fine for a lot of the rounding that you could do with handles, so feel free to just do that if you want to. I'm not going to do that on this one. I'm just going to go back and forth and kind of shape it however I want it to be. So I'm not going to have a consistent little rounded edge here. There's going to be a little bit more contouring here and here because the handle kind of dips right there. So I want to do that stuff by hand with this, so I can kind of focus on different little areas that I want to while I'm doing it. So now on the belly of this, we're going to go ahead and switch to our soft foam side and get inside some of these tighter areas. And again, you could take and use this as a strop and go all the way across here if you want, but me personally, I'm just going to go through and sand it like this and make it nice and easy, because I've already kind of started sanding the belly here and I don't want to drag any sandpaper across that. I want to keep everything going the same direction. Make my job a little bit easier later. So when it comes to the 600 grit, we're just going to go through, use the soft side of this for everything else that we're going to do. Because all this is really doing is just smoothing everything out. It's not really there to, we're not trying to remove a bunch of material. So you're not going to have to worry about sanding the G10 too fast and not sanding the pins enough. This is really just meant to remove some of the finer sanding marks and smooth everything out. So I get a lot of people that ask me about my buffing wheel that I have on my drill press. All it is one of these Chicago Electric 4-inch buffing wheels that you get from Harbor Freight with some compounds that you can get from Harbor Freight as well. I'll be using the gray compound for this one. I don't want to use a light color one because those light color compounds will stick into any imperfection in this black G10 that we have here. So we want to make sure that we go with something that's going to be similar to this, because that's going to be the area that might have imperfections. So we got our drill press turned to its top speed. We're going to go ahead and get some compound on here and get this thing buffed. There is how she is looking. You can see how black that gets. And this is just with a 600 grit. That's it. It really makes, whenever you get this two things buffed here, it makes that white liner stand out like a son of a gun, doesn't it? As you can see, we go from that dull to that right there. That's a good looking package. So I'm going to go ahead and get this finished buffed, and then we'll talk about this handle and the process and the outro. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this one up right here with a little bit of this. What do y'all think about how that turned out? I really like that color combination with the black, the white liners and spacers, the awesome stabilized burl wood in the center, stainless pins that really go well with the blade. Really interested in what y'all think about that. Now, to recap what we did in this episode, of course, we attached the handle scales using our 2-part epoxy. We went ahead, squared everything out, and then we started the rough profile with a 36 grit belt on the 2x72 to kind of put a little bevel around the scales. And then we went from there to the spindle sander with the 80 grit spindle on there. Kind of smoothed everything out to prep for the hand sanding process. And then with the hand sanding, all we did was a 320 grit and a 600 grit, and we got that out of it. So for anyone who thinks that you have to go up to the 1,000 grits and all that stuff, it's not necessary. If you want to do that, do your thing. I'm not a big fan of hand sanding, so I've kind of fine-tuned everything to figure out what I can do to get the biggest bang for my buck time-wise, and that's my process. 36 grit belt to rough shape it, then oscillating spindle sander to fine tune that shape and get some of that 36 grit out of the way, and then go over, and all we really have to work on is 2 different grits while hand sanding, and we get those results. So that tends to work out for me. I'm interested to see what y'all think about it, and I want to know what y'all think about how this is turning out as an overall package there. What do y'all think about all that? Guys, this knife, super comfortable in the hand. It's a little bit forward heavy, which I really like with a chopper like this. I think this is just going to be a fantastic knife. But in the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put an edge on this, and then we're going to chop some stuff and have a blast doing that. And then in the Shop Talk Tuesday after that one, we're going to be making a sheath for this. So y'all have all that to look forward to. Guys, thank y'all for coming by. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video, one of my other videos if you haven't yet. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Guys, y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time. Check that thing out. Ah, this is such a cool knife. See y'all.